There's a certain kind of silence that exists just before an engine comes to life. Not the quiet of absence, but the quiet of anticipation. It's the breath you take before you twist the throttle, the pause before motion. And when I think about the upcoming KTM Adventure 1090 for 2026, that silence feels heavier somehow. Like the motorcycle world itself is leaning forward, waiting to see what happens next. Because this isn't just another adventure bike announcement. This isn't just a spec sheet waiting to be dissected. This is KTM returning to a name that still echoes in the minds of riders who remember what it felt like to ride something unapologetically alive. Something that didn't just take you places, but demanded something back from you in return. The 1090 has always existed in that strange, powerful middle ground. Not the biggest, not the smallest, not the safest choice, but often the most honest one. And as rumors, whispers, and imagined silhouettes of the 2026 KTM Adventure 1090 begin to take shape, you can almost feel KTM sharpening its knives again, refining, trimming, hardening the edges of what adventure riding is supposed to feel like. Picture it for a moment. Early morning. The sky still undecided between night and day. The garage door rolls open and there it is, standing with that familiar KTM stance. Tall, purposeful, almost impatient. The design doesn't scream for attention, but it doesn't hide either. Angular, sharp in places, restrained in others. A motorcycle that looks like it's been carved for movement rather than display. You don't admire it from afar for long. You want to swing a leg over it. You want to feel where your weight settles. How the bars fall naturally into your hands. How the bike seems to rise up to meet you instead of forcing you to reach down to it. And that's always been part of the KTM adventure identity. The bike doesn't ask you to adapt to it, it adapts to you. The seat doesn't feel like a couch, but it doesn't punish you either. It feels ready. Like a pair of boots you've already broken in, even on the first ride. You thumb the starter. That first pulse from the engine doesn't whisper. It doesn't shout either. It speaks with a deep, controlled urgency. A reminder that there's serious intent beneath you. The throttle response feels immediate, but not aggressive. A tension waiting to be released. A subtle vibration through the bars. Not uncomfortable, just alive. This isn't an appliance. This is a machine with a heartbeat. And as you roll out into the waking city, the Adventure 1090 doesn't feel oversized or awkward. That's always been part of its magic. In traffic, at low speeds, filtering through narrow gaps, the bike feels narrower than it looks. Balanced, predictable. The clutch take-up is smooth, the fueling refined, the bike responding to micro-adjustments like it's listening to your thoughts rather than your inputs. You catch reflections of it in shop windows as you pass. Tall stance, long travel suspension gently compressing over potholes and uneven tarmac. There's an authority to it, but not arrogance. And you start to remember why so many riders fell in love with this platform in the first place. Because when the road opens up, really opens up, that's where the 1090 begins to breathe. You roll the throttle just a little more. The engine note deepens. The horizon starts to move towards you instead of the other way around. Wind pressure builds against your chest, clean and steady. The screen guiding airflow without turning the ride into a vacuum. The bike doesn't surge violently. It gathers speed like a tide coming in. Smooth, relentless, confident. And somewhere between third and fourth gear, you realize you're smiling inside your helmet. This is the kind of motorcycle that makes distance feel smaller, that turns long stretches of asphalt into invitations rather than obstacles. Highways don't bore it, they become canvases. The engine sits comfortably at speed, not strained, not numb, just present, always present. There's a rhythm to riding an adventure bike like this. Long, straight sections followed by gentle sweepers. The bike leans naturally, the weight shifting predictably beneath you. It doesn't fight gravity, it flows with it. And that flow is what separates a good adventure bike from a great one. As the landscape begins to change, concrete giving way to open land, city noise fading into wind and engine, the KTM feels like it's settling into its natural habitat. You turn off the main road. The surface roughens. Gravel replaces tarmac. The sound changes immediately. Stones tapping against the skid plate. The suspension starts working in earnest, absorbing imperfections. smoothing chaos into motion. And here, off the beaten path, the Adventure 1090 feels honest. The throttle becomes more than just speed, it becomes balance. You roll it on gently, feel the rear tire bite, feel the bike stabilize under you. Standing on the pegs, knees gripping the tank, the motorcycle feels like an extension of your body. Not heavy, not unwieldy, just right. This is where KTM's DNA really shows. Decades of racing, of pushing limits, of refusing to build bikes that feel dull. Even imagined in its 2026 form, you can sense that lineage in every movement. The bike doesn't float aimlessly over terrain. It attacks it with composure. Rocks, ruts, loose gravel, nothing surprises it. And nothing surprises you either, because the feedback is always there, flowing through the chassis, through your boots, through your hands. And while you're out there, somewhere far from phone signals and deadlines, you remember why motorcycles like this matter. Why adventure bikes aren't just about going far, but about feeling free while doing it. If moments like this resonate with you, if this kind of riding, this kind of connection is why you're here, take a second to like the video, drop a comment, and subscribe to SuperBike Intelligence. Not because it helps the algorithm, but because it tells me you feel this too. As the sun climbs higher, the ride changes again. The gravel track reconnects with a narrow mountain road. Tight turns, elevation changes, shadows flickering across the tarmac. And suddenly, the Adventure 1090 feels playful. You shift your weight, tip it into corners, feel the suspension load, and release. The bike doesn't resist being leaned, it encourages it. The bars communicate clearly. The front end feels planted, precise, confident. There's a moment. There's always a moment when you forget you're riding an adventure bike at all. When it feels more like a tall, muscular sport machine than a long-distance explorer. And that moment is intoxicating. It's the reason so many riders choose this category, because it refuses to be defined by a single purpose. You ride higher, the air gets cooler, clouds hang low over the peaks. The engine note echoes differently here, bouncing off rock faces, stretching into the distance. Each gear change feels deliberate, mechanical, satisfying. And as you stop at a lookout point, engine ticking as it cools, helmet off. The bike stands there quietly, dusted with dirt, sunlight catching the edges of its bodywork. It looks earned now, like it belongs in this place. You sit on a rock nearby and just look at it for a while. There's an emotional weight to motorcycles like this. They're not just transportation, they're companions. They carry your memories in their scratches, their worn grips, their dusty crevices. And the idea of a 2026 KTM Adventure 1090 stepping into the future while carrying that legacy forward feels right. As afternoon turns into evening, the ride continues. Back on smoother roads now, but with a different mood. The light softens, shadows lengthen. The bike feels calmer, settled, like it's content just moving forward without urgency. The throttle becomes gentle again. The ride becomes reflective. Night falls. And riding an adventure bike at night is a different kind of intimacy. Headlights carving tunnels through darkness. The world reduced to what's directly ahead. The engine becomes your constant companion. Its sound grounding you, reassuring you that you're not alone out here. Rain begins unexpectedly. Light at first, then heavier. Droplets streak across the visor, streetlights blurring into glowing halos. The road darkens, reflective, slick. And yet the KTM doesn't flinch. The throttle remains controllable. The chassis stays composed. Each input feels measured, precise. There's trust here. The kind of trust that only comes from a motorcycle that communicates honestly. You know what it's doing because you can feel it. You know how much grip you have because it tells you. And in moments like this, wet, dark, quiet, that trust matters more than horsepower numbers or marketing slogans. You ride on. Highway miles pass beneath you, illuminated by white lines and red taillights ahead. The bike hums steadily, unfazed by distance. Wind noise fades into the background. Your thoughts wander. Future trips. Places you haven't been yet. Roads you've only seen on maps. And that's the power of a motorcycle like the Adventure 1090. It doesn't just take you somewhere. it makes you think about where else you could go. If you're enjoying this journey, if this vision of the KTM speaks to you, let me know by liking the video and subscribing to SuperBike Intelligence. It tells me you want more of this. More stories, more imagination, more motorcycles that stir something deeper. Eventually, the road leads you home. The engine cools as you pull into the garage. The silence returns. But it's different now. Fuller. Satisfied. You take off your helmet slowly. One last glance back at the bike before turning off the light. And as the door closes, the thought lingers. The KTM Adventure 1090 isn't just about adventure in the literal sense. It's about emotional range. About being comfortable in chaos and calm alike. About machines that don't dull your senses, but sharpen them. And as 2026 approaches, the idea of this motorcycle returning, refined, modernized, but still unmistakably KTM, feels like a promise. A promise that adventure riding won't become sanitized. That motorcycles will still demand involvement. That there will still be bikes built for riders who want to feel everything. The road, the terrain, the weather, themselves. And maybe that's why the Adventure 1090 matters so much. Because in a world that's becoming increasingly automated, increasingly filtered, increasingly distant, this bike reminds us what it means to be present. Twisting the throttle, feeling the machine respond, moving through the world with intention. And that, more than anything else, is the future of motorcycling worth believing in.